So my question is, in the last few months, I found that with all my extra spiritual disciplines and japa and prayer, that I found that I've been blessed more in my life in different areas, from finances to happiness, and most importantly happiness, I would say, and feeling good about myself and at peace. And would that be as a result of my disciplines and extra efforts?
What do you think?
I think the answer is yes, but I just wanted to kind of touch on it because it's a big factor in it's a big blessing at the moment, and I'm very, very grateful for it.
The normal way of thinking is that we're individuals disconnected from anything else, and we have to struggle against everything. So the world of parts, the world of individuals, the world of spatial place, the world of temporary events, all of this is deemed by us to be our reality. So we don't often think that we are connected with anything else. And particularly in the area of despondency. So when we sit back and life seems to overwhelm us, we then resort to religion. Many people resort to religion on account of that. So we find people are in a bad place, either physically or psychologically or emotionally. They want some better condition. There being no solution in the world, seemingly in a natural way, and through self-effort or anybody else's effort, they resort to the supernatural. So they think, well, God at least can do something. So we appeal to God. The other area is, I'm fine, but I want a better condition. So I'm fine now, but I want something more in terms of wealth or in terms of physical health, something like that, even though I'm not in dire straits. So the one case is absolutely desperate and wants to appeal to something outside the norm. And the other case would be that I'm okay, but I could be better. And then the third case might be that I want more knowledge, and maybe ultimately it would be a realization that if I haven't got or feel I haven't got, there's no point in doing anything about it, because I don't mean that you should be lazy about it, but there's no point in appealing to an extra cosmic or a supernatural entity or something outside myself. So any request for abundance is immediately flawed. If you want to be wealthy, requesting it would not work. On what basis? On the basis that thought itself is a kind of force, a subtle force. It can't be dismissed as a nothing. And the unconscious has a pulling power about it. So how to condition the unconscious mind? We have to do it through conscious effort. What's that conscious effort? Making sure that the mind, or the thought within the mind, is understood to have an infallible power about it, because the thinker is infallible. If we understand the ultimate thinker, witness knower, is what religion calls God, your own divine entity within, standing there, full and free and perfect, then by beaming a thought, good or bad, plus or minus, it'll have its effect in the universe. That's the idea.
Okay.
So there's nothing really that is disconnected. And when we say we get an inspiration somewhere, Einstein would have had a dilemma. In his day as a teenager, he would have been faced with Newton's understanding of things, and he would be faced with Maxwell's understanding of things. And then it said one night he had an aha moment, a kind of discontinuous moment that says, wow, a kind of quantum leap in understanding. So that's it. Having cogitated on it so long, some divine inspiration, we can say, came about. And he comes up with a brilliant resolution of it, thinking that time is not fixed, thinking that it's different for two different observers. And that leads him to this astounding equation, the equivalence of energy and matter, E equals M. We get about the C-squared. C-squared is just there to reconcile units. So if we want abundance or strength or anything, There's a rule in meditation that is, whatever you meditate on comes to you. So if you want strength, let's say you have an imaginative bent of mind, which we all require, and you sit and think of an elephant, and you see how solid an elephant is, how an elephant lumbers along, how a tree is nothing, no problem for an elephant, just picks it up with its trunk, tosses it to one side. As soon as you think that, the whole mind takes it up. Now we think the mind is something that is a section in a box called a brain, but that wouldn't really make too much sense if you think about it. But it's necessary if you're a materialist. So you want everything to be biophysical.
The mind is not here.
No, the mind is not there.
Okay.
Why should it be there? How will you measure where the mind begins, where the mind ends? You think of an elephant, no matter how many x-rays you do on your brain, you won't find an elephant there. You think of a pink elephant even, the pink elephant will definitely not be there. Never mind an ordinary elephant. So to confine things to the brain is not our view. It doesn't really make any difference. Vivekananda said no point in discussing that really, because what we call mind is as physical. It's an energetic thing. He discusses it in his Raja Yoga on a whole chapter, psychic prana. What is psychic prana? So psychic prana is what we see as the arrival of thought, subtle vibrations, subtle vortexes. We think that the mind is in the brain only because that's a kind of convention. But really, the mind is in every single cell of the body, surely. It's not confined to anywhere. When you think of, let's say, a lemon, you do an exercise. You have a piece of board and a lemon. Now, you take a knife and you open the lemon out and you see the juice running out. Yeah?
Yes.
And you bring it up to the nose and you smell the citrus, and then you tip your head back and you squeeze a few drops on the tongue. Then the whole mouth puckers up.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of thought having its impulse on the body is a known fact. It's a fact of our experience. Every single cell of the body takes its cue from it. Now you might say, of course, well, there was a neurological processing going on, and we wouldn't deny that. But the point is that when we think, or when we feel, or when we find anxiety or stress, or optimism for that matter, then it has an effect, not just in a localized area, but it's everywhere. And let's suppose then, like every other thing, that the human body is essentially bioelectrical. And does it have an electrical field? I think there's convincing evidence to say that this human body has some kind of electric field beyond the borders of the body. How far it extends, we don't know. But what we do know is that this whole universe must be connected. And by thinking of things in parts and segments and separating things, I think we're misunderstanding. So there's a holistic aspect to it. What you do here affects everywhere else. What people sometimes call butterfly effect. Because everything is entangled and connected. So it's no surprise that in areas such as quantum physics, you put two subatomic particles in connection with the other, separate them at an infinite distance, and you change the spin or something in the one, and immediately you'll find it in the other, with no travel. It's a non-local thing going on. So this, the mind is subtle. Yes, the mind is subtle. Thought within it is subtle. And because it originates from only one entity, the thinker, it's infallible and carries through unless suitably neutralized by a doubt or something else.
Okay.
You can do it, positive thought one moment, and then neutralize the next second, third second, fourth second by some doubt or some fear.
So it's the positive...
People understanding this will say, oh, positive thinking. So the way back from the 1950s, 60s, people like Dale Carnegie and Norman Vincent Peale and all of these things, all of these people, Napoleon Hill. So when people want to be wealthy, pick up a book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and study the principles there and see how it works. Now, if you have some anxiety about it or some doubt about it, it doesn't work. It's not effective. It's no longer positive. So if you say, please give me something, you sit down and pray. Lord, 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 please improve my health, it means my health is poor. If you say, Lord, give me wealth, it means I'm not wealthy. Even in the secondary position, if you say, Lord, may my wealth improve, may I become more wealthy even, it means I'm not as wealthy as I would like to be.
But
So every positive statement that we make in as an aphorism or a prayer, something like that, is accompanied by a bracketed, I don't have. There's a gap in me, I can't fill it. So +1, -1, nothing happens.
Okay.
Yeah?
I see, I get you.
Whereas if you put a thought through and sustain it, my example of posting a letter, you post a letter once. You don't wait to see does the postman collect it, and then we follow him to the post office, sorting office. If it's airmail, go on the airplane, you may as well deliver it yourself. So why not trust that the thought that goes through is God's grace manifesting.
So
And that the thinker there is infallible. The thought effect is God's grace manifesting in this way as something like a current. And we steer it in whatever direction we like, confidently. And don't have a second look at it. Post a letter and leave it. Now, if you have an idea, yes, you can keep it sustained. So keep it sustained by what you want and visualize what you want and keep it sustained. But of course it has a very limited value if it is done on an egocentric basis. So the value of spiritual discipline is, in Jesus' language, seek ye first the kingdom of God, other things will be added unto thee, automatically, without asking.
Well, those words there exactly answer the original question, don't they?
Yeah.
Which is very effective words,
Yeah. So if you think, what is the kingdom of heaven? The kingdom of heaven is some entity within you, derived from an inquiry into the universe as such, maybe, to say, if I want to understand the whole of the cosmos and all that exists and all that's in it, I don't have to travel to the very ends of the observable universe, go to the redshifted portion of the universe. I can deal with any sample and generalize it. And so if I I want to find out what is nature, what is within nature, what is the fundamental principle of nature, what am I fundamentally, is an inquiry. And when I find it, I surely have found that fundamental entity in all of the whole universe. So on Tuesday, somebody asked, this is a difficulty. So you're saying that there's a self, divine self here in me, and you're saying that every divine self is actually the one self. There are no separate selves. And my answer is yes. The Samkhyas didn't have that. Why? Because the question arises, if you get enlightened, we all get enlightened, if it's only the same self. But Vedanta says, no, not so. Because what you're calling the self, a psychophysical entity, a particular entity, not even part of a wave system, holistic wave system. If you are that, then it doesn't work, of course. But if you're fundamentally the substratum of all existence, then it works everywhere. So everywhere means in all manifestations. We come to the conclusion that what we call the universe with all its resources, abundance, wealth, is only one and the same. And thought is a mobilizing current for it. It has to condense somewhere. It has to condense on the other side somewhere. Sooner or later it has to happen. So there's a principle that works in the game of life. You think, put a thought in. You can sustain it with imagination. Put it as a past event, already accomplished. In Jesus' language, believe that it's already accomplished. There's the clue again. And then keep that sustained with a sense of joy, a sense of fun, a kind of sporting attitude, understanding this life is a game. You're convinced of that. Then you put the thought in. You don't have to wait in an anticipation, is it coming, is it coming? You put it and leave it. Next day, sustain it, be thankful for it. Put it in the past, already accomplished. And it arrives. Even without unknowing it. So if we put in daily, strong, true, wise, full, free, truth, beauty, goodness, love, harmony, put that in and understand that there is a connection. So when we sit down for formal meditation and prayer and so on, there's that deep connection which you're describing, which grows from moment to moment, from day to day, week to week, month to month, and so on, deepens. The psychological process is that the unconscious being reformed, and that is the sucking power, that has a suction within it. It attracts those things to you.
Okay.
When you say truth, it attracts truth to you. Beauty attracts beauty to you. So all those things come to you unasked.
So would it be fair to say then that the majority of people have the understanding or the practice of prayer kind of wrong, in the sense that most people pray, I pray for wealth, I pray for better health. Instead, the prayer should be in their mind to themselves.
It's not wrong, it's a good starting point.
It's
good
to
start somewhere.
Okay.
So we start off with a point of view of deficit. Then we want that to be filled. It's better than doing nothing. So that first movement is fine. Then after so many years, 20, 30 years maybe, hopefully more, the realization will come, am I an entity that is a kind of emptiness that requires filling? Is this whole universe just a series of holes, and God had nothing better to do than to fill them? Or am I an entity that it's already full and free and perfect? I just didn't notice it. And when I notice it, then all prayer becomes more of an expression.
Okay.
So it becomes, there's no anxiety within it. Lord, give me this, look out the window, is it here? No. When will it come? When will it come? Then you might say, well, see, I was a Christian, so maybe I'll ask Buddha, become a Buddhist, ask Buddha now. And then the same thing happens, all right, well, obviously Buddha's not good. Like taking out a well-shorn insurance policy, this doesn't work, I'll go for this one. Well, change my religion, change my teacher, change all of that, yeah, because I'm in a hurry. Because I think God is a shopkeeper, and I put my money in, I said, look, and I gave a bargaining chip. I said, look, I'll be good, I won't do this anymore, I won't engage in negative values anymore, or immorality, if you give me this. See, the whole thing, the Catholic thing, you see. I not just Catholics, but everybody, every religious person. I'm just using him as an example.
Yes.
So if I say 1 decade of the Rosary, 5 decades of the Rosary for a month, then I'll get this. No, you won't, because +1 -1, you get nowhere. But if during that recitation there comes to your mind, Lord, you're there, you're here, you're constantly here. Lord, you're here, you are now, and you are love. And there's nothing outside of that. There's nothing in the future to get, because you're here in the eternal present. Having tuned into that, I get an internal delight. And I feel the truth of that. And I feel the purity of that. And having gotten to that, then what became of, like, give me this, give me that. So the prime example is this. Vivekananda in his youth. His father passed away and left debt in the family. So Narendra went to Ramakrishna. I know that you are closely connected, I'm paraphrasing, closely connected with the Holy Mother. I don't actually kind of believe this, believe it for myself, I can't do it. But you can do it, go and ask the Mother, please, to raise my circumstances. And Ramakrishna said, I can't do it, you do it, go and do it yourself. So he gave the instruction, every student should follow the instruction of the Guru, he goes there, with the intention of, please, can you, assist me and my family and my siblings in their dire needs. He used to sometimes go without food, saying, I've been invited to a friend's house to eat, knowing that if he ate, he would take food away from others. So he would say that, and not eat, of course. He had no job, nothing like that, no means of income, no means of supporting his family. And he was born in a very wealthy family. He didn't really need for much. And then, of course, he experiences poverty. And there's a good reason for it, because when you examine all these events that we go through, similar events, how can we ever have the sympathy for the downtrodden and the poor that Vivekananda had if he hadn't gone through that? If he hadn't felt what another person feels in those circumstances, how could he possibly have had that level of compassion that he did? Sure. Raising a whole country seeing that we should worship God, not just in the mother, not just in the father. Let your mother be a God to you, let your father be a God to you, let your guest be a God to you, let your teacher be a God to you. But let the poor, the downtrodden, the uneducated, the suffering be a God to you. A very practical part of Advaita Vedanta. So anyway, he comes to the Mother Kali, stands in Dakshinaswara in front of the temple, and he goes back to Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna smiles and says, "So, did you do it?" I'm imagining a lot of this. "Did you do it?" He said, "No, I couldn't do it." He said, "Well, why?" He said, I stood there, all I could do was to ask for pure devotion. That's all. See? Or pure knowledge, something like that. I couldn't ask for anything. 3 times he went and found he was overwhelmed with it and discovered the reality of the Mother Kali. That is God in, through, as nature, as time, as all the events that go with it, and as Maya, the shifting landscape of this existence that comes in and goes out momentarily. And we take it to be a permanent reality, and the Mother's display shows us that it's a game, and it's our valuation of it is it's either kindly or cruel, but we didn't notice that all of it is the display of pure energy, Shakti. Shakti, energy, divine energy. But you see, every form of energy is Shakti. So even thought is Shakti.
Is prana Shakti?
Prana Shakti, same thing. Prana, literally something that moves, mobilize something. Okay. So yes, cosmic energy, the thing that moves everything, is prana, also called Shakti. So Shakti in feminine form is there, prana, Shakti, Maya, Prakriti, nature, all of these are synonymous terms. And Maya comes from a root which means to measure. Now if you go to quantum physics, you see things exist when you measure them. Things are observed when you measure them. Things are localized when you measure them. Things look like particles when you measure them. It's all in the measurement. You can argue whether it's a conscious observer, whether there's a machine there, a measuring device, and so on and so forth. But when you measure it, waves of possibility materialize, as it were, into particles. Now, when you generalize that principle, what a wonderful thing. It's something that we knew of in Vedanta. That when you try and measure something, or try and get to grip something, or frame things within a certain limitation of time and space and functionality, then there's an operating area, and we think that we are in one position, trying to struggle either through confrontation, or through withdrawal, or through yielding, and we don't see any bigger picture than that. We work with those limitations. What is knowledge? When we find those limitations as just a limited circle that has a playfulness within it, and we can stand conveniently outside it in a poised position. Stand where God stands, in other words, and see how it looks. Where God stands, God made the world and saw that it was good. When we understand all those things and repeat that time and time and time again, the whole shifting landscape, what we call the world, shifts in our favor. New unexpected things and events come into our area, into our field, and things start adjusting in line with our current of thought, even unintentionally. So there's no harm in starting that process off, but ultimately during that process, when we repeat the whatever it is, 5 decades of the Rosary or what have you, at some point in time there might be a replacement of an anxiety to get something, a formality of doing something with a view to getting something, and that may be replaced with a certain amount of love, and that may be replaced with a certain level of faith that says, there's nothing to get. I have it already. I have this creative capacity of thinking, and when I mobilize my thought, I can get anything I want. The thinker itself is constant, infallible, infinite. When I express the thought current that is supplied, it's God's grace, and that can be steered in chosen directions. When I don't think I can steer it in any way, and just let it run without being mindful of it, then unfortunately we get the result of that. Random thought creates a random universe for us. When we decide to take it and mindfully use it. So this coming week, Wednesday, according to some traditions, is Buddha's birthday, Buddha Jayanti, or Buddha Vaishak it's also called. And so on Tuesday, we'll be inviting a Zen Buddhist priest here, and he'll be talking to us a little bit about Buddhism. Now there are so many diverse varieties of Buddhism, but there are two main characteristics where all schools agree. One is the area of compassion for all creatures and beings, and the other is the area of mindfulness. So we find that when we engage the mind in this way, nothing is wasted. When we repeatedly make efforts, joyful efforts, sporting efforts, to steer the attention in a specific way, then we find there's an inner calmness that takes place. And again, the shift occurs outside any borders, because ultimately the area of operation has no borders. When we talk of a field, it has no borders. What's the border to the electromagnetic field? You can't say. So the same thing, what's the border to the gravitational field? What's the border to the Higgs field? As soon as you say field, you're talking of an area which we can't really find any limitation to it. Yeah. So the same thing with the thought field, what we call mind. We can't determine where one mind begins, another mind ends. We play the game of life. Now in mindfulness, we can take any activity that is going on, mental activity, physical activity, or anything that we observe in relation to it, and be aware of it. So an intrinsic part of the style of meditation, for example, specifically emphasized by Zen Buddhism, is in terms of sitting, not just sitting, but every other activity, but of course in a highly, highly developed, concentrated way, formal meditation, which is there just to be aware. It's not doing nothing, and it's not doing anything. It's just simply sitting there and being aware of anything and everything, not trying to change it. We do that with the Enneagram. We give 2 weeks in between discovery of what your personality type is, and the second thing, what will we do with it? And in the meantime, observe yourself in compulsion and don't try and change it. In other words, be aware of it. Be aware of the internal things that normally I took for granted. I didn't really observe specifically. So, for example, it's a sunny day. Generally there's an appreciation of it, particularly in Ireland. So people put shorts on, they dress appropriately, they go out. People who weren't jogging before, you see them jogging. But some of them are jogging with earphones and listening to music, which means they're blocking out what? Things that could be an area for appreciation. Bird singing, bird song. Or even, if you're doing it in the city, the sound of traffic and the process of it. If we were to break sound down, we would have a very different view of it. We wouldn't just take it for granted. We would see that it's a complex process. First of all, an electromagnetic wave system must be there, something that carries waves, an all-permitting area. There must be air, which carries it as well. There must be a voice box that is developed. There must be a mind that is able to translate concepts into words. Every word having a corresponding concept, and to express it suitably, and to maybe have a thought process, how will I shape these words so that it'll be comprehensible to others. And I may choose to do it differently for different people in order to communicate more effectively. So far, how many processes? A brain is involved, neurology is necessary, education is necessary, background is necessary, literacy is necessary, imagination is necessary, creative impulse is necessary, and the words come out. Then on the other side, there must be a receiver. a kind of funnel like this, an ear, shaped in such a way that sounds are received, and all the waves then go through a kind of network, so that we have a tympanum there which vibrates and is carried through a nervous system into the brain. An interpretation is made, and finally my consciousness tells me, oh yes, and maybe some doubts. I didn't understand this word or that word. And you can pick up the tone of voice. In other words, the rate of vibration that is carried. Rate of vibration, amplitude, volume, all of these things are picked up and understood. So it's a highly complex thing. Now, if we go back a little bit, it's more complex in how it developed, because there's a molecular aspect to it. There's an atomic aspect to it. For example, if you ask a group of children, let's say 100 children in the class, you pick on the number 100. They say, since there are 100 children in the class, I want to bring you a cake tomorrow that is made by 100 people. So there's, in the following day, children all come excited to school, and I bring a cake, only this size, small cake, giving each person a piece, suitable for 100 people. They expected a huge cake to be brought in by truck, and expected the authors of or the editors of the Guinness Book of Records come in, measure it, and all the rest of it. So their puzzled looks, what will I say to them? I'll say to them, no, 100 people made this cake. You had to have people who, sowed the wheat seed, people who watered it, people who looked after it, people who harvested it, people who gathered it and packaged it or processed it, people who ground it, people who mixed it with other ingredients, people who baked it, people who packaged it. And more than that, you see, so if you make a soda bread, for example, or even just soda bread, then there are other ingredients. Or in a cake, there are other ingredients, people who planted the sugar. Now it's more than 100 people we're talking about now. We just said 100, but it's now looking more like thousands of people involved. Transporters, supermarkets, supermarket stores, deliveries, shelf packaging, all of these things in terms of getting a small cake to you. Now, if you take it even further, it's more than that. The whole universe made your cake. Without the sunshine, nothing gets harvested or grown. We can't munch and crunch on it. We have no vitality if we don't have the sun, no capacity to digest it. And then where that sun comes from, it has to be hydrogen and gravity. So all of that going way, way back to the essential ingredient of life, namely hydrogen and the principle of falling or gravity, is all involved in that one cake. But did we appreciate it? Did we understand it? That means every subject matter is a source for meditation. There's no such thing as distraction in meditation. You sit down, and what we call a distraction is just a lead, a link to finding out what is the source of something. Going back to its origin, coming back again to where we stand, going back, going forth. Now in mindfulness, therefore, if we are mindful of the thought process, then that has its effect as well in the world. So we're mindful in everything, because the mind going off at a tangent also has a suction. The suction comes from the unconscious area, which regulates it, whether we know it or not. So we have all these opportunities to reform that. And in doing that, what we're doing is we're attracting all the goodness that we are thinking of and being aware of. Even as you sit now, there are some things you're aware of and some things that are not. But if you shift your attention, I can be aware of how my seat fits and feels against the seat I'm sitting on. Or if my leg is crossed, how the pressure on the back of the leg feels. Yeah, you get the idea.
Yes.
Or how the knee in the front feels. It's a question of shifting the attention. We're designed not to see it all at once, Otherwise we'll get confused. It'll be a jumble. We won't be able to sort anything out. So fortunately we have the time and space to shift our attention to a specified local area, concentrate on that, shift the attention to something else, shift the attention to a sound, shift the attention to a sight. But to be aware of the shift itself, there's another level of it. So we can be aware of the object and then aware of a choice, let me shift it. And then be aware of the shifting process of it. We can put it down finer and finer and finer and finer. But we don't ordinarily do this.
Is the awareness of the action mind as well?
Ultimately, the mind itself is observed. You can be aware of the mind itself. And the mind itself has a peculiar capacity. It knows that there's a watcher on the one side, and it knows how the shifting movement takes place, and it knows about the objective experience on the other side. So there's an inference that there is a watcher there. It's because of this capacity of the mind that meditation works. And that spiritual practice works in the sense that it's all to do with the instrumentation of the mind. The mind itself is the revealer. More specifically, the intellect is the experiencer. So there's a choosing aspect within, and that we call buddhi, the determinating factor. We have what we might call free choice. Not necessarily free will, make a distinction, a free choice. In asking a question about free choice or free will, Ramakrishna gives a very simple example, has a way of declutching complex questions, providing simple answers through simple examples and being right on the target. So you can have a cow tethered by a rope to a small pole or something fixed like that, and a sufficient length of rope for it to graze in the field all around and think it has the freedom, not understanding it's always tethered. It has a limitation. So we accept there are limitations, but then there's limited freedom within that range. Now within that we have the freedom of choice that indicates unlimited freedom, an area of unlimited freedom that we call our divine self and God. So knowing that and using that, we can have fun, great joy in the process, the sporting art of being aware of everything. And we can determine to do that. We can add a new joyful dimension by doing that, and a certain composure that comes as a result. So that whether you believe in God or not, even meditation along those lines will produce an element of joy and calmness and peace. You meditate like this after a few days, you feel this joy and calm and peace without asking for it. And you'll feel a kind of freshness in the environment around you, that things are in your favor, because the joy is sustained and felt. And your reactions then will not be the same as when you were in a grumpy mode and weren't observant of it previously, or weren't observant of the things around you. We can watch all our emotions. You can watch impressions and emotions and thoughts rise, have their play and fall without interfering with them. We can be aware of the things we didn't normally observe. So you know the formula is oats.
Mm-hmm.
So to observe something that is normally not observed, you take for granted sunrise, for example, or the smell or the scent of flowers in season at the moment, being spring, without getting the hay fever with it, or observing the hay fever itself if you get it.
That's positive thinking.
Yeah, or observing the heartbeat means feeling it, or observing the one corner of an elbow, and learning to find that the shifting of awareness is a pleasant activity.